Well, hi everybody. It's Dr. Jay Bowen here at New Jersey Regenerative Institute, and thanks for tuning in. So this is part two of my interview with Roger DeRose, the CEO of the Kessler Foundation. And if you missed part one, please go back and watch that. And especially if you've heard anything in this one that you think is interesting, you'll get more information from part one. But Roger, just thanks so much for coming back and
Thank you.
sharing it a little bit more. If you want to give a little bit of quick background for the people who didn't see part one, and then we'll get into some questions.
Sure, Jay. Yeah, thank you for having me, and thanks to your viewers for following and the work that we do as well as the great work that you do at your institute and your sports clinic as well, Jay. So Kessler Foundation is a foundation that is all about changing the lives of people with disabilities. We have a two-part mission. One is research, and the research that we do is, I call it translational research, that we try to get it into bedside care to really improve the function of spinal cord patients, brain injury patients, stroke, multiple sclerosis, autism, and other neuromuscular conditions as well. And then the other part of our mission is employment, to try to address the very stubborn issue that people with disabilities have in terms of joining or rejoining the workforce after they've had or sustained a disability. And we do that by a grant-making program that we have where we give grants to other nonprofits that are working with nonprofits as well as for-profits to create job opportunities for people with disabilities. So that's what we do at the foundation here in West Orange, New Jersey, and East Hanover, New Jersey. But our research is felt around the world because much of our research and our postdoctoral training program has an impact globally as well, Jay.
Yeah, and so you had said in part one that the foundation has about $30 million. Some of that, which is great, will help support our fellows so that we can educate, people about regenerative medicine that then can go off in different areas of the United States and sort of translate what we're doing. Also, as people who've been watching me, I seem to plug a lot the company that I helped develop, which was Data Biologics. And so that's at least going to show us that outcome to do that translational outcomes, as Roger said. Typically, it takes 17 years to get research from the bench to the patient and impact their life. And we want to try to circumvent that as one of the reasons why we started Data Biologics. And that potentially can be 4 to 5 years. So using that kind of outcomes and real world data can hopefully get it to people faster. So I want to, again, express my appreciation to Roger for supporting us because the foundation supports our fellowship that we help train the next generation of people, and more people visit us to see also what we're doing. So with that, you had said it, and I mentioned earlier, the 30 million. Do you have an estimate of how much you guys have got funded sort of from, or I should say promised from other sources like the federal government? Because I see you email and propose the foundation shows that all the researchers get a lot of money sort of proposed to them.
Yeah, well, that 30 million was just for this year, this 2024 year, Jay. And, the endowment is significantly larger than that, probably tenfold that. And we pulled down the best practice of 5% from the endowment to support our initiatives. But the balance of our income statement, if you will, is comprised of the grants that our scientists are so successful in winning, in addition to the donations through philanthropic donations that come in from families and donors that have a relationship back to the types of injuries and illnesses that we treat and that we focus on as an organization. Over the last, I think it's 16 years, Jay, I'm just going from memory now, but I think that our scientists have won over $260 million in research grants. So they are world class when I say that. And this is 40 principal investigators We have 150 of the 190 employees that we have that are dedicated to research, but of that 150, 40 are principal investigators that are actually going out to all of these different agencies, whether they're federal, state, or private foundations, writing grants, winning grants, and then executing on those grants. And they have an incredible success rate of 30% as a win rate. And when you compare that to academia, as an example, Jay, whether it's Rutgers or Wisconsin or Stanford or Yale or Harvard or MIT, usually the academic win rate is usually about 8 to 12%. So it demonstrates, I think, having all the tools that you need in your toolkit in terms of being able to convince the reviewers that you have everything that you need. But then in addition to that, having a great passionate research team that is really dedicated and has a track record of success, that they feel comfortable in giving these large NIH, Department of Defense grants and other grant mechanisms. So the research team has been very, very successful over the years.
Yeah, and we've been a beneficiary of that. So if you can give a little background on how the Derfner-Lieberman Lab sort of got started, which is what really helps fund what we're doing.
Sure. Yeah, it's a pleasure, Jay, because you've been involved in that along with our good friend Jerry Malanga, who has since passed. But Jay Lieberman is the donor, and he is the sole trustee of the Derfner Foundation. And Jay heard about our work. And when we approached him on providing some initial pilot funding from the Derfner Foundation to do regenerative therapies, he said, let's start out with something small. Let's start out with a $50,000 grant to collect pilot data and see if you can leverage that pilot data into something larger. Because the way it works in the foundation, Jay, is that if we can collect the pilot data that we need, we can use that to then springboard to these larger grants at NIH, Department of Defense, and other major agencies. Because when you have the pilot data, you can demonstrate to them that you've collected data that proves your theory. And so we did that with Jay, working with you and Jerry, and collected that data. And then after that successful episode in working with the Derfner Foundation, we went back to Jay and said, Jay, it would be wonderful if you could continue on a much larger scale to fund clinical fellows in your institute, as well as postdoctoral fellows at Kessler Foundation, so that, to your earlier point, we could be training the next generation of clinicians, as well as postdoctoral fellows that would dedicate their lives to the research angle of regenerative medicine as well. And so we've been doing that now for about 6 or 7 years, and Jay has invested about $1.5 million into the program that we work so closely with you on, Jay. And I think that has given us this initiative and this momentum that we've needed to continue the program. And I'm hopeful that this is something that continues with new grants that come in that support the work that you're doing and that our team is doing with Dr. Trevor Dyson-Hudson and Dr. Nathan Hogeboom, and other postdocs as well, so that we can continue on this track of regenerative therapies.
Yeah, and if Jay does, listen to this for some reason, we just want to give him a shout out and a thank you so much for the support. Because again, like a lot of things, without it, we never could have done it.
That's right.
So, somewhat of a loaded question, maybe I'll have to answer, but you're the one who sort of keeps everybody together and focuses the, herding the cats kind of thing. What do you see on the regenerative side that, you talked about moonshots in part one that you'd like to push forward, in the future?
Well, I'll never forget a conversation that I had with your colleague and mentor, Dr. Jerry Malanga, Jay. And I know that you're doing knees and shoulders now with regenerative therapies. Um, and I remember a conversation I had with Jerry, and it had to do with spinal cord patients. And he had the thought or the concept that, there's so much scar tissue that is built up after the surgery in the spinal cord. And I think, and I'm talking from a lay perspective now because I'm not a clinician and I'm not a scientist. So I'll try to put it in lay friendly terms, and you jump in and add to it, Jay, because you have the clinical side of this. But I think Jerry's concept was if you could do regenerative therapy at an early stage following the surgery of a major spinal cord injury, that potentially, whether it was platelet-rich plasma or it was adipose tissue, that potentially you could reduce the scar tissue from the healing of the surgery, and that would then allow us in some of the techniques that we're using in transcutaneous stimulation over the spinal cord, where we're actually sending electric signals into the spinal cord, or through the epidural implant, that we would even have a greater success rate in terms of the transmission between brain intention to the healthy neurons that are still below the level of injury from the spinal cord injury that took place. And I thought it was such an interesting concept that Jerry had mentioned, and no one has ever done it before. And so it is investigative, of course, but I think that would be, I think, breakthrough in terms of going beyond what is being done now in some of the leading work that you're doing through the Derfner Foundation to try to reduce the scar tissue that comes from the surgery in a major spinal cord surgery, so that we have a better chance of sending those signals from brain intention to the healthy neurons in the spinal cord.
Yeah, and as you said, what happens if you can think about a nerve as a wire, you have insulation on the outside and you have the little wires on the inside. And whether it's a spinal cord injury from a knife or something, gunshot, and then they have the surgery, and the inflammation from the surgery is all that is creating scar tissue that's potentially going to happen. And now you have these two connections that want to connect, but there's scar in the middle. And fat is very, very anti-fibrotic or reducing scar that may allow some of these connections to start to go. And then, like you said, with the stimulation on one end or the other, you can start to say, hey, come over to see me, and there's not a blockage there. Yeah, I think that would be great. And I've had conversations with neurosurgeon and other thing. Like everything, it's herding cats, and everybody's busy going every different direction with their own life. And this takes a lot of time and effort to do something that's this important and this big.
But wouldn't it be great if, if we went to the Derfner Foundation, to Jay, and we said, down the road, I know we have so many things on the plate right now, Jay, but down the road, looking at another kind of a moonshot extension of the work that you're doing, with the team right now, that if we could uh, get the pilot data to demonstrate that scar tissue could be reduced, and that we had even a greater chance of the transcutaneous stimulation and the epidural implant stimulation to send those signals more clearly, through the body, that could be a breakthrough in terms of how we treat spinal cord patients in the future.
Yeah, or you never know. Maybe Elon Musk is watching this too. They had the brain implants, so maybe he'll fund it.
You never know, right? You
No, I
just
mean
never know who's watching.
it's one of those things that is just so impactful because having a spinal cord injury is just so life changing. I
Right.
mean, I think the only other things that are potentially worse and more problematic are some of these war injuries that we see that are unfortunate and sad,
Right.
and they just need our support.
Exactly right, Jay.
So, yeah, I mean, just to let the audience know what's the foundation supporting for our current projects is that we use this fat product to transfer and has some healing effects that we fill, we clean, cushion different orthopedic related issues like cartilage loss and other things tendon gaps. And the question has been sort of what's happening. And we do have some data to show what happens with PRP. But we had talked to the late great Arnold Kaplan about it, and he's like, listen, just get your outcomes and improve patients. So unfortunately, he didn't give us great direction about what's in this stuff. And so right now we've got approval to get some preliminary pilot data that no one's ever done on multiple different devices to see what is sort of in this fat. Because we take the fat and move it, and that's a structure. And the problem is some of the data that's out there, actually they digest it, they get stem cells. The problem is that's not what you're delivering to someone, a stem cell. So you're sort of taking apples and oranges. They're fruits, but they're not the same. So that's one thing that's coming, and hopefully, in 6 months to a year, sometimes things move a little slower than you want. We'll have data that we can present and or publish. So that's great. And also, Jay and the foundation has helped support us with Shockwave, which has been around a long time nationally, but the United States has really just started in the last maybe 5 to 10 years, and has really just sort of exploded in the last couple years. And so I started a medical organization that sort of morphed a little bit and grown. And again, that was also with Roger's support that helped that fledgling to move on a little further. And we just have right now a focused research with taking people who have knee arthritis. And in some people, they overload that without the cushion of the arthritis or of the cartilage, the reason you have arthritis. And that bangs on the bone, and the bone starts to break down a little bit. And that's called a bone marrow lesion. And so we're going to see if we can take Shockwave, help stimulate that bone to recover, and potentially reduce people's pain. So those are our two sort of most pressing current projects we're going on. And if you're watching this in years from now, we'll give you an update once we get some data out there. So again, just like to thank you for your time, Roger. Thank you for the knowledge about, the history and sort of what's going on with the foundation. And if anybody wants to support the foundation who's listening, you can reach out. The foundation has a website. They have social media. They'd be happy to talk to you about, taking your money, just like me. I'll take your money. But it's for the greater good to try to support research and more knowledge about people's quality of life and their function. So any last words, Roger?
Well, Jay, I appreciate the time and your continued interest in the great work that's being done in our organization and your organization. And, it's my hope also that one day that many of these treatments that you're working on with regenerative therapies, that the insurance industry will see the value in this and start to cover the cost, or at least a portion of the cost, for the patients as well. I mean, I know that they're not as expensive as a major knee surgery or hip surgery, but at the same time, I think with the work that you're doing with data biologics and collecting this data, that you're going to have a powerful case to present to the insurance industry so that they can see the benefit and start to cover the costs for patients prior to going to expensive and sometimes unnecessary surgery when a regenerative therapy could actually improve their function.
Yeah, so a lot to discuss on the insurance side. So I'll just give the short story. Listen, if anybody's out there, insurance companies are essentially trying to manage risk. So people are like, why isn't any of this covered? It's so much better. Remember, if we do this, and it's not onus is on us to show that this is as good as, if not better, than current standard of care. And that's not just cost, but it's safety and outcomes and longevity. Because an insurance company doesn't want to cover this and then also have to cover a knee replacement at the same time. So I get their perspective, and so we're trying to get that data to show that this is a cost-effective treatment. And with the foundation support, with data biologics data, we're going to be able to go to the insurance companies who actually care about saving money and give them the data so that it's going to be tough for them to not approve it. And they're potentially going to want to because it's going to cost them less. So for patients out there who are like, hey, we got to get this going, support or invest in data biologics, support in some of this research, be an advocate, call your congressman, whatever it is. But those are the kind of things for us to get the data so that we can then show that it's safe, a cost-effective treatment, and apply to the right problem. You can't just say, oh, stem cells are great for everything. All right. So we want to be, better scientifically, better ethically, and, make sure we get it in the right hands of the right people. So again, just signing off. If anybody hasn't subscribed, or hopefully they like this conversation, hit the like button, notifications so they see other things coming out. Follow us on social media like X, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all that kind of stuff. So thanks again for tuning in. Thanks so much for your time, Roger, and we'll see you again.
Thank you, Jay. All right. Thank you, Jay.
Take care. Have a good one.
Bye.